Welcome to Real-ationship Goals, a podcast all about the realities of healthy relationships. Real-ationship Goals is a project of the Advocacy Center for Crime Victims and Children in Waco, Texas. If you or someone you know has experienced sexual violence or harassment and is seeking support, services, or needs more information, links to resources and our hotline number can be found in the description. The views expressed in this podcast are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect those of their organizations or affiliates. Welcome back to Real-ationship Goals. This is episode 7. My name is Aleigh.
Mariana. And I'm Blythe.
Okay, so I have a different relationship to time than some of my friends. And what I mean by that is I can sometimes forget that time exists, or that I have no awareness of the amount of time that has passed when I'm doing something, right? So whether that's here doing work, or if I'm at home doing a thing, it's in my mind, it's probably been 20 minutes and actually it's been 2 hours, right? And so what that means is that I might have told someone that I was going to meet them, or that we were going to leave together at a certain time, or whatever that is, right? And in my mind and in my heart and in my body, I'm like, yeah, we're good. And I also sort of sometimes underestimate the amount of time it might take me to do something. And so that has led to a lot of sort of uncomfortable situations with different people I'm in relationship with. Uncomfortable in that I have done a wrong thing. And so I think that I have experienced, I know that I have not, I think, a lot of sort of shame around that. Oh, the way that I do this is bad. I am a bad person. I am bad for not, for kind of losing track of time, or not having the same relationship to time as other people do. And so I have found ways to, as I've become more aware of that, compensate for that. So it's I'm constantly setting alarms on my phone and setting them for 15 minutes earlier than I believe I need them to be. Even if that's just I'm cleaning my house, but I have to be somewhere, it's I'm setting an alarm because I will just go. And so I think that as I have seen how that has impacted people that I'm in relationship with, it's been a real source of shame for me, where I'm trying to overcompensate and not do that, and it just feels it's me, I'm the problem, it's me. And
thank you, Taylor.
Yes, truly, thank you, Taylor. And not just that okay, this is a thing that you're doing, making a commitment to someone and then not doing that is wrong, right? But there are ways that is wrong, the thing that I did, but the feeling of I am wrong, inherently, because of the way I do this. So that was kind of a long story, but
thanks for sharing it though.
And just going off your story, so today we are talking about shame, and shame is a painful feeling of humiliation or distress caused by the consciousness of wrong or foolish behavior. And sometimes, although shame is a very normal feeling to have, sometimes we get caught up in the, emotion of just maybe feeling embarrassed about situations. And so we tend to maybe pick up unhealthy habits of compensating for that. And so today we're just going to talk about how, what are healthier ways to respond in feelings of shame. So, yeah.
I feel like this is a great time to bring up the Dr. Brown. Mostly, and I know we talk about her a lot, but she is a shame researcher. And I love her definition of shame, and how she distinguishes I love, Ariana, you started to get to it, like shame versus guilt, or even like how shame is similar or runs along similar lines, but is different from things like guilt and embarrassment. And like she calls shame an intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. That like something that we've experienced, done, or failed to do makes us unworthy of connection. And showed distinguishing like guilt, I have done something wrong, versus shame, like I am wrong. Kind of like Aleigh, you were saying in your story, it's just like, oh yes, I maybe don't thrive, or like actually, which I really actually admire that about like the ability to get so like focused on something, and like lose track of time is like also admirable. That's cool because I'm not wired that way. But yeah, the distinguishing of like, okay, is the issue or whatever, like something that like I do, like it's, yes, I failed this test and I should have studied, versus like I am so dumb, is like is a very different. And I'm so glad you mentioned, or you kind of plugged Taylor Swift, and I haven't listened to that whole song, but like the problem is not you, the problem is that you do things that are unhelpful. You are not a problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, shame's hard.
Yeah, and I think when you were saying Brene Brown's definition of shame, I think that like the key things there to point out, and why we're talking about shame as like an uncomfortable feeling in relationships specifically, rather than just like an uncomfortable feeling as an individual, like, is that shame makes us feel like we're unworthy of love and belonging, or that we're unworthy of connection. And so like within the context of a relationship, like with a romantic partner or a friend or something, it makes us feel like we don't like deserve to be in that relationship, that we are like less than that person, and feeling like we are unworthy to be in a relationship with someone. This is a tangent that we don't need to follow, but it sets us up for really unhealthy dynamics in a relationship. If I'm constantly feeling like, oh my gosh, I am so bad and I am so wrong and I am unworthy of this relationship. So like, I can't believe that you were doing me this favor by being in the relationship with me. It really sets us up for like that person to be manipulative, to take advantage of us, because we're just feeling like we owe them something because of our own deficit as a person, right? And that is not a good place to be in a relationship, or to set yourself up for a healthy relationship. So like I said, that's a tangent we don't need to follow, but I just wanted to like say like, this is an important thing to think about within relationships, for many reasons, that being one of them.
I think that sets up well a good distinction to say that the opposite of shame isn't to say that like, yes, I am perfect, I am incredible. I mean, you are incredible, but like I have no flaws. It's to be able to say like, no, I'm a human, and part of being what it means to be a human is that I make mistakes, that I am not perfect, but those are not intrinsic to like, I am not so completely flawed that I am unworthy of connection. It's like, I make mistakes and I need to own up to those and like take accountability for those, but that is not, I'm not a rock, like a doormat or something like that. Like you have full value, and you have full value, and you are just imperfect and make mistakes at the same time, because that's part of what it means to be human and be a person. I
said that I talked about just a second ago the reasons why shame can really set us up for unhealthy relationship dynamics, but it does more than that. It like creates a disconnect in our relationships, because we're afraid of being unworthy, or kind of experiencing rejection, be another way to kind of think about that. Then we're not able to really be vulnerable with that person we're in a relationship with, right? Now, all different types of relationships. So you might not be being vulnerable with your teammate on the basketball team, or your coworker or your boss or something, right? But in our more intimate relationships, maybe family, maybe friends, maybe a romantic partner, like vulnerability is an important part of that being in a healthy relationship. And so that shame makes it, if you're experiencing shame, it makes it difficult to come to that relationship with that vulnerability, because you're just thinking about all of the ways like well, they're not going to love me because
Mhm.
I'm this way, or,
Sure.
um,
Kind of to take a little bit of a spin on this of like shame is something that I'm not to say that it like I'm sure everyone has experienced shame. I know I have. Like shame is something that we feel, but I think like we can't like we feel shame, but like we can also shame others. And like that's something that like I don't know if it's like a feeling that we do or like something that like
mhm,
yeah, we can put on other people to like make them feel like they are less than or that
Mhm.
they are right, what was it, like unworthy of like love and belonging for like who they are. I was at a high school yesterday and like really thankful for some students who we were talking about stereotypes and specifically like how stereotypes show up in like gender and like gender-based stereotypes and like really thankful for some students and particularly some like male students in the room who were like, yeah, like sometimes like I like if I do something that is like outside of this like box of like what it means to be a man, it's like it's other people in my life who like say something like
Mm.
or like who make me feel less than for doing this thing that's outside of this box.
Mhm.
Or whether it's whether they say something like, oh, like you're so weak, like stop being a girl or something like that, which that is a whole other thing to dive into and not the space for this. But yeah, just as we've been talking about this of like, oh my gosh, like what like we do in those or like what people do or what we do in those instances is like we're shaming other people for just being who they are if they don't meet some arbitrary criteria or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, shame is also something that is unhealthy that we do to others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, sorry, I want to hear what Ariana has to say. Going back to like my story,
Mhm.
right? There is like, it's okay, and it is probably right for like the people who I'm sort of like making late or arriving late to
Sure.
meet, right? It's good for them to give me the feedback of like, mm, this is how this impacts me, or this is how
Absolutely.
this makes me feel. But there's a difference, like you were saying,
Mhm.
between like, you're so awful, you're late all
Mhm.
the time, I can't, like all these things, right?
Yeah.
There's a difference between that and saying like, hey, I've noticed
Mhm.
that you like have a hard time staying on time, basically.
Mhm.
And this is how it impacts me, and this is how I think it would benefit if we could
Sure.
shift, right? So I just want to say
That's
like
a good-
there's
yeah.
room for constructive feedback.
Yes. Yeah.
But there's a way to do that without shaming someone. So
Mm.
Ariana, say something about shame.
Yes, just going off of what you're saying, like there is a difference between actually like sometimes like when you're giving that feedback towards someone as it's coming off as like an attack
Mm.
on someone, and there's a healthy way of doing that,
Mhm.
of getting your point across. Like Aleigh, you were saying with how you have a trouble with being on time and how like if there is a friend of yours that has that noticing like feeling of like, hey, this person is really struggling with being on time. Also just like not attacking that person because it is a critical comment. And like sometimes like
Mhm.
shame can also be linked to critical comments coming from family members,
Mm.
teachers, friends, or any of that
Mhm.
sort. So I think it's just really important to focus on there are healthier ways to respond to how we,
Mm.
identify what shame is and how
Sure.
we can help our friends or people navigate through that feeling.
Mm.
What are some of those things of like how to respond to our own shame, and then how to respond to like a personal relationship feeling or experiencing shame?
I feel like we say this a lot, but like I think right one thing is just like to identify it. And I think like for me, the way that because yeah, I don't think I was thinking categories of like, yes, this thing I'm feeling right now is shame.
Sure.
But I think I have like I can really easily identify like, ooh, I don't feel like I'm enough in this instance, or I feel like or yeah, like I feel icky, I feel like something is wrong with me. I think is like how that feeling like shows up in me, which I want to do a better job of connecting of like life, like what that thing that you're feeling right now, that not enoughness, that feeling of like wrong, like that I am wrong, or like some part is like wrong with me, like that is a shame feeling. And I think yeah, anytime we're talking about like how do we respond to emotions, it has to start with like identifying them first. Or yeah, the things that kind of coincide with them, I think is one.
Also,
Others?
and just another way of handling how to identify shame is like also having another person maybe
Mhm.
helping you navigate of what
Mhm.
that is. It's like,
Mhm.
well, what are you actually feeling at this moment? And if you
Mhm.
identify that I'm feeling like I'm really not worthy right now,
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
something is really going on with me that I just don't feel right about, and it's making me feel like kind of humiliated in that moment,
Sure.
and just like having that trusting person in your life to help you navigate
Mhm.
on what that is, and also just like, hey, it is okay to like feel this way, but that is not who you are
Mhm.
as a
Mhm.
person.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
I'm
that's
so
another way to look at that.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that. We mentioned like Brene Brown at the beginning, and right, her research shows that like shame thrives in like instances and spaces of like secrecy and silence, and it is often like much more easily dispelled when we talk about it, and when
Mhm.
we tell someone that we trust and who loves and who cares about us, that like, hey, I'm feeling ashamed, I'm feeling not enough, I'm feeling like not like good enough or like worthy of connection and belonging in this moment. And yeah, and just like verbalizing that is huge. Because then right, hopefully like that person can like talk us through that and be like, no, like, sure, you should not like maybe you shouldn't have done that thing, or maybe you should have.
Mhm.
And like that was actually a really good response. But like the thing is that like you are still loved and you are still enough,
Mhm.
and I still care about you.
Mhm.
And all those things too. Yeah. Do you have any additions? The
No, I think that all those are good. I think like I heard in there like active listening, like
Mhm.
empathy, which are all things that we've talked about before.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think that those are all good. And I think like, you know, go back to Brene Brown, like when we're like thinking about shame, like how we respond to it is like important.
Mm.
And yeah, like how we've talked about like how others relate to us or how we relate to others kind of with shame, but
Mhm.
like what about our own kind of like response to shame?
Yes, like are you talking about like running around like shame shields
Yeah, yeah,
of
yeah.
like the things that we
Yeah.
do to like deflect shame, even though it like doesn't really work, right? And so it's like moving away, so avoiding contact with others. Basically like, okay, how can I like like hide into myself and like not have to deal with people? Like you can move towards, and this is what I do. um, you like avoid shame by like people pleasing, or moving against like, okay, how can I combat shame in myself by like creating shame and pain in others? Which I think I don't know if it necessarily like shows up in this way, but something I think about, or I've seen like recently with some of the high school students that I've worked with, is really often like things that they'll say of like, oh, like you're trash. And like, well, people aren't trash. You might have just thrown that ball like trash or something like that. But like that person is not trash. And um, not that like that's coming from a place of like shame shield, like moving against, like trying to hide shame within myself. But I think and I don't know why I just threw that in there then. I was thinking about it earlier, but like, yeah, I think like shame and like in that instance, like can come out in really tiny ways, of like, calling people like trash, or you're this or you're that. It's like, no, they're a human being worthy of dignity and and things, and maybe you just happen to be really terrible at math, and that is okay. Or maybe like that was not a successful throw,
Yeah.
and that is okay to also acknowledge like, ah, yes, that was a terrible toss.
Yeah.
But like you yourself, you are not trash, you are not terrible or something like that. And so yeah, even how like that shaming language like it comes out in like little things like that.
Yeah. So I think like instead of those shields, right? The moving
Mhm.
away, moving towards, moving against. I think maybe Blythe can offer us a more helpful response to shame with our relationship goal.
I would love to. Your relationship goal this week is to like identify a safe person, a trusted person, whether that's someone, a friend, a family member, someone that you are in a relationship with, that when you start identifying when you feel shame, right? When you feel the not enoughness, the not worthiness, that you can go to and say, hey, I feel like I'm not enough. This thing happened. And even if it's not like, and this is what I need you to do about it, but just like to share that with that friend, or that person. So in sum, your relationship goal is to identify a person that is safe and trusted that you can go to like verbally share like, hey, this is what I'm feeling in this moment. Because we know that shame like is so much more likely to be dispelled when we talk about it, and we admit that it's happening. Because a lot of times another person was like, oh yeah, me too. Like I felt that way as well. So, and Aleigh has our recommendation.
I do. I'm going to recommend a show on Hulu called Reservation Dogs. And there's 2 seasons out right now. There's going to be a 3rd season. I'll give like a little warning that there are some like definitely some spicy language and some adult themes, though it is about a group of Indigenous teenagers living on a reservation in Oklahoma, and kind of all that they experience and think in the way that they relate to their Indigenous culture and elders and all of that. And it is just, it's funny, and it is sort of like gritty, and it's such a important, I think, piece of representation, because I feel like we don't always, or at least I don't always intake a lot of Indigenous media or art or things like that. And so it's really great, and I that's my recommendation.
Love it.
Yeah,
So good.
well, thank you all for tuning in to episode 7. We'll be back next week with episode 8, and we hope to see you there. Thanks so much for tuning in to Real-ationship Goals. This episode was produced by the Prevention and Education Department of the Advocacy Center for Crime Victims and Children in Waco, Texas. You can follow us on Instagram at ACCVC_prevention. See you next time.